professionals and ordinary people living extraordinary lives, sharing their expertise and life stories, making a difference one word at a time. Now, here's your host, Vicki St. Clair. Welcome to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. Talk radio to inspire, inform, and stimulate. Bringing you enlightened discussions with authors, creatives, innovative business and health professionals, and ordinary people living extraordinary lives, sharing their expertise and life stories, making a difference one word at a time. Now, here's your host, Vicki St. Clair.
And welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Well, today we will end the show with nature writer Susan Hand Shetterly. She's written about wildlife and wetlands for more than 30 years. And the journey of her new nonfiction book began in her native Maine, leading her then to Canada, Wales, Japan, the Philippines, and beyond. More on that later in the Seaweed Chronicles, A World at the Water's Edge. First, I'm very pleased to have a Conversations Live favourite return today. Dan Millman celebrates the revised 25th anniversary edition of The Life You Were Born to Live. And Dan, for those who are familiar with his work, and I know that many of you are, he's a former world champion gymnast, coach, martial arts teacher, and college professor. He's also the author of 17 books published around the world in 29 languages. And his book, Way of the Peaceful Warrior, was adapted to film in 2006. And today we're talking about The Life You Were Born to Live, a guide to finding your life purpose. Dan Millman, welcome.
Well, thank you, Vicki. Good to be here with you. My goodness, that introduction makes me sound a little bit like Indiana Jones, but I look nothing like Harrison Ford, unfortunately.
I don't know. You could say there's a similarity there. So, well, congratulations, Dan, because this book, the original book, has been out for 25 years, and you just revised this. You've updated it for a whole new generation of readers, and, of course, those who missed it the first time round. But so congratulations on that, first of all, because that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you. It was worth the labor, I think, and I'm glad my publisher initiated that.
Right, right. So we've talked a couple of times on the show. We've touched very, very briefly on life paths, which this book talks about. So I think we need to begin with a deeper explanation of what this is all about with the premise of the book. The original book described 37 life paths based on a form of numerology. So would you explain to us a little bit more about that?
Well, I'll touch upon something I added for the new edition. I have studied many systems of understanding, gaining self-knowledge and different mystical and psychological methods from the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, which is based on Jungian archetypes, to the Enneagram. Many people have heard about those books. I studied that well before any books were published on the subject by reading someone's face to determine their personality type and so on. So I've been exposed through my psychology studies and other mystical practices of various methods. But then I met a man I'll call the warrior priest. I won't reveal his real name just now. He has passed away since then. But he had read Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It had come out several years before we met. And he said, Dan, I think you're going to be helpful to people, so I'm going to do a reading for you. And he sat me down in his place, and he changed my life in 1 hour. He did a reading and told me things about myself that brought my life into focus. It had been a bit hazy and crystallized my strengths that I hadn't fully appreciated, some challenges I had that I hadn't addressed. I was sort of stumbling through the dark in some ways. And that's when I began teaching after that. I mean, it catalyzed, it changed my family finances, many other things. And it had such an impact on me that when I learned somewhat later that he was teaching an advanced training for a small group of people on a small island in Hawaii, that I said, you mean I can learn to do for other people what you did for me? And he said, yes. Because I asked him at the time, are you a psychic? How can you know this about me? And he said, no, I'm not a psychic. He said, I've been trained to know where to look, which fascinated me. So finally, I did learn what I call the life purpose system. He gave a series of lectures, and I only had 20 small pages of notes. But I went home and I started doing readings for free, friends and relatives, anybody who'd listen. And they were all quite impressed. Yeah, how can you know this stuff, man? And so I began, gradually, I internalized the information, didn't need my notes anymore, and started doing readings professionally. And over a period of 8 years, before I presumed to teach some psychotherapists and other health professionals the rudiments of the system. And
Right.
then I realized, it's time to write a book on it. And that's where I wrote The Life You Were Born to Live, the original edition in 1994. And people still thought I'd gone off on a numerology tangent. They said, Dan, you wrote Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and you wrote No Ordinary Moments, very practical guide to daily life. Now you're doing numerology? And the fact is, I was never particularly that interested in numerology. It seemed a little vague and abstract to me. And I just could not fathom how adding up the numbers of one's date of birth could give valid, reliable, accurate information about some core issues. But his reading was so powerful for me, and all the readings I gave for people around the world for 8 years convinced me it would be a worthwhile book. And the rest is history. It's over 1 million people, well over 1 million, have read the book. And it was time to do the revision after the year 2000. It was much delayed, but finally we were able to add all 45 life paths, and I added new insights and information that I'd gained in the intervening years. So that's where The Life You Were Born to Live came from.
Right.
But all these words for your listeners might be less valuable than my mentioning this. If anyone goes to my website, peacefulwarrior.com, and they'll see immediately, the first thing they'll see will be a square in it that says a link to a life purpose calculator. And if they click on that, it's free. Just click on it, and they put in their date of birth, day, month, and year of birth. They will immediately see their birth number and, more important, some key words and also a paragraph or two highlighting a sample or a taste of the in-depth information I provide in the book, so they can at least get a glimpse of their own life path and birth number.
Right, right. So you mentioned that you, before you did this, before you met your mentor, you really had no interest in numerology and thought it was a little, out there. I too, very, very big skeptic. If I can't prove it and I can't figure it out and it's not going to work, I'm a very big skeptic. But I have to tell you, I went through this and I did the test for several people that I know really well, that I've known all of my life. And I was like, whoa, this is weird. This is really weird, including myself. So, there's a lot of numerology out there. How does this differ in your eyes? What
it
makes
differs
this
in
different?
several ways. Yeah, the best way I can describe it, and the way this mentor who revealed the system to me, he said, yes, there's Mayan, Hebrew, Chinese, Aztec, Indian systems of numerology, and some talk about soul paths, destiny paths, life paths, so many paths, and it becomes confusing, and they say you can change your name and then change your numbers. This is very direct, only what seems focused and reliably accurate. And he said, the story he told was, if you were a Chinese martial arts instructor and you had this group of inner circle of students you taught your most secret techniques to, and then an emissary from the emperor came and said, you must come to the palace and teach the royal family, you might go. You wouldn't refuse, so you go to the palace and you teach. But you hold back some of the real in-depth stuff, and you reserve that for your closest students. And he said, it's like that. And many numerology systems don't quite get it right. I always found it maybe 40% accurate. But the system he happened to know and revealed to me, and that I refined over those years from those 20 pages of notes. If anybody's seen the book, there's a lot more material. it just seems the interpretation, the way of adding the numbers and the interpretation are somehow open some further doors to clarity.
Right.
And it's all about, the purpose for the book is so we can have more compassion for ourselves and for other people. Even some people's lives seem to be so together. Everyone has their mountain to climb, their mountain path, and we all have our own battles. And so it helps in that process to really, and looking up the birth numbers and the life paths of our parents, for example, it was a revelation for me, and our children, and significant others, and people we know, and professional colleagues, can lend insight in a very compassionate way to what they're dealing with, since we all have our own path.
Right, right. And I, of course, included my parents when I did this. My father, spot on, spot on. My mother, not so much. But there again, the choices we make along the way can make changes in what we consider our life path.
Absolutely.
So we have to take a little quick break, and let's do it now so I don't have to interrupt you. Because I pulled out some stuff that I was really interested in and want to talk about that when we come back. I'm talking with Dan Millman, author of The Way of Peaceful Warrior, and of course we're talking today about the life you were born to live, a guide to finding your life purpose, and we'll learn a little bit more about how this can help. You're listening to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair.
Parkinson's disease affects as many as 1 million people in the United States. At the Parkinson's Disease Foundation, it's our mission to beat this disease. To learn about the Parkinson's Disease Foundation, or if you want to help support our work, visit our website, pdf.org, or call us at 800-457-6676. In the Northwest, contact the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation at nwpf.org.
At Sundown Communications, we find that most of our clients are brilliant at what they do, but they lack the time and resources to write and create business messaging that delivers results. That's where we come in, providing a diverse range of professional copywriting services for fresh strategic web content, PR, advertising and promotion, marketing, speeches, and much more. Call us today so you can focus on what you do best, and we'll do the rest. Call 800-495-7617. That's 800-495-7617.
Hi, this is Vicki St. Clair. If you have a business, service, or event and would like to deliver your message to a large audience, call me at 425-269-4772. Let Conversations Live shine the spotlight on you. Call 425-269-4772.
Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. Inspiring, innovative, and a great place to advertise. Learn more at conversationslive.net.
Make us part of your daily routine. Alternative Talk 1150.
And welcome back, everyone. You are listening to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. My guest in this segment is Dan Millman. He's celebrating the revised, updated 25th anniversary edition of The Life You Were Born to Live, his guide to finding your life purpose. Dan, you want to give a little bit more explanation about these 45 life paths, just so we listeners really understand what we're talking about, and then we're going to look a little bit deeper into a couple of issues around that.
Terrific. Thanks, Vicki. First of all, it probably comes from Pythagoras. He was the founder of geometry, but also a mystic, and he was the first to ask, do numbers mean something? How is 1 different from 2 and 3 in the human psyche? And so it evolved from there. Now, in the original version of the book, I had 37 life paths, but after 2000, we have new ones. So this book covers all 45 life paths. And if you divide 45 into the population of the planet, billions of people, you're going to get millions of people working your life path, my life path, and everybody. So are we suggesting, am I suggesting that all these millions of life paths, that their personalities or path is exactly the same? Of course not. Because we each have our own genetic heritage, we have our own individual life experiences, and where we may be working our path in a more positive, constructive, mature way, or less so. So that makes for the variety of people, even if they're sharing the same birth number. And the way I put it is, if I were to point to a tree outside, and we could say that tree is unique in that there's not a single tree on the planet with exactly the same angle of every branch and leaf, for example. But I can say things that apply to redwood trees that are different from birches or aspens or oak trees. So in that sense, each of us is unique. Each of our stories, there's not a single story on the planet exactly like ours. But we do share certain patterns, and that's what these life paths are about. They're indicated by a birth number, and each number has certain meanings associated with it. One would be creativity and issues of security. The number 2, if that's in your birth number, it would have to do with cooperation and balance, and it goes on, expression for 3s, and so on. And so that's where the numbers translate into some meaning. And as I indicated before, anyone can go to my website, click on the Life Purpose Calculator, and get some immediate information. It's free, whether or not they choose to purchase the book.
Right.
So you mentioned your number?
Yeah, my number was 2911, and the 11 has some significance because normally you make people add that up to a single digit. But what do you have to say about 2911? I don't mind. You can say good and bad. It's okay.
Oh, sure. And my number is 268. We all have a birth number. So, well, the 2 is really about cooperation, and you're happiest when you're feeling in a collaboration. Even now, we're collaborating in a sense. So there's that, you'll feel more on track. And the importance of balance for the 2 is not either over-cooperating with someone, doing things when they haven't even asked you to do them, for example. You might be familiar with that. And the other is going into resentment and under-cooperating, because if you keep giving and giving and giving and they're happy to receive, there's an imbalance, if that's all that happens. So that's the 2. The 9, and they combine, of course, but if talking about each number, there's a certain charisma you have. 9s just have a charisma. It's a presence. There's a depth to it, and integrity and wisdom. So you learn integrity. Life doesn't give you a lot of leeway. You play things straight. As an example, you teach others and lead by example. That's about the 9, and it can be great wisdom. Though 9s can be clueless about how life works at the beginnings of their life, and they have to learn lessons about this is how life works. Now the 2 and 9 add up to 11, so the birth number would be described as 29/11. The 11 is a double 1. And so double your pleasure, double your fun. 1 has to do with issues with creativity. It doesn't mean you're automatically creative, but you have a drive in that direction, in a way you need to create. And the double 1 just doubles that. But it also, for some reason, with that creative energy, there's a kind of insecurity, a need to prove yourself. And that can bring some pressure in life where you just need to prove yourself. And it can lead to achievement. But there's always that feeling of, I've got to show I'm good enough. I'm as good as other people. So anybody dealing with that, they have to take the risk to be different, to make mistakes, and so on, to bring their creativity to the fore. So the combination, 29/11s are big-hearted people, actually lucky in some ways. One shouldn't get cocky, but like if there's an auto accident, you tend to walk away without a scratch or, minimum. There's a certain luck because the energy attracts energy. So those are a few things, a few highlights of the 29/11. And again, every birth number has its qualities, its strengths, its challenges. And the most important part of the book, I think, is the section on spiritual laws, which actually describe an aspect of life that can help overcome the hurdles on any given life path. So for each life path, I give people several laws that are listed in the book and described clearly. An example, anybody working 2 or 4 in particular, patience isn't always their strong suit. But if they are willing and learn to do things in a very careful, step-by-step process, like building a house, first a solid foundation, and so on, they can accomplish an immense amount. But they don't tend to want to be patient. So that's why the law of process, which I describe in depth, can help anyone to, or fives. Fives are here for freedom, which means they value vast experience. They like to know about different things and look at life from different angles. But fives can get scattered, and they can defocus their efforts. So what I tell fives is if you're digging for water, you're going to have more success digging one hole 100 feet deep than 10 holes 10 feet deep. So that's an example of these reminders from these spiritual laws, the law of discipline.
Yes, and I read those in depth, and I was really, as I said, I was a little taken aback. So interesting stuff. Now, with some numerology, I'm not a numerology expert by any means because, as I said, I've always been very skeptical about it. But
Sure.
but some numerology has like favored groups, if you will. With this one, you say not so much that there's not necessarily a number, if you will, that has a more evolved soul, as you put it.
I think people almost make this up. They think it sounds good. In my understanding of this system and the birth numbers, that there is no better or worse, superior or inferior life path, even though it might feel like it sometimes, one or the other, depending on what people are going through. But really, they're just different. They have different strengths and challenges. Much of it depends, how someone's life looks is not about their birth number. It's about whether they're working those particular dynamics in a more mature, constructive, positive way or more destructive or negative way. That makes much more difference than which birth number you happen to have.
Right.
And by the way, if someone does do the life purpose calculator, they'll also see there's a composite number they can do. They can take their significant other, a friend, a relative, any two people, the energy they make together. And that composite number, my wife and I, for example, make a 10, which she doesn't have a 1 in her birth number, and I don't have a 1 in mine. But together we make a 1 and a 0, which stands for spiritual gifts. So, again, there's no better or worse. It's not about telling people this is compatible or not compatible.
Right.
It just raises points about what the purpose of that relationship, its strengths, just like an individual life path. So
Right.
one can look up that as well at the website. And also what year they're in a 9-year cycle. It proposes that life unfolds in these 9-year repeating cycles. They're cycles. They don't repeat necessarily, but they go through these 9-year cycles. And it helps us to see where we are in that cycle. It's like planting a seed, the creative seed, a 1. Then we go through 2, working with other people, 3, issues with expression, and so on.
Yeah.
And we see where we are. We can't reap the harvest when we're in a 4-year necessarily. We have to wait till the 8 and 9 before we begin a new cycle. So it gives us some patience and wisdom in that way.
Right, right. A lot of people I talk with, and I suspect a lot of people you talk with too, Dan, are very unhappy in their work or feel, they've climbed the wrong ladder and it's like, where do I go from here? And you say that when somebody asks, can a life purpose system guide me in finding the most suitable career? You say the clearest answer is yes and no.
Well, that's because you pick any career or even a sport. I looked at the Olympic teams, several teams. All the people had different birth numbers, mostly. So there wasn't one birth number that made a great athlete. It's what the birth numbers describe as how we will approach the work, whether it's acting, music, sports, or any given field. People will approach it different ways. So you have a group of accountants. They're all going to approach that a little bit differently, their personalities. So it does give us insight, but it does hint at the kinds of work. 257s like alone time. They might be good researchers doing isolated work. They might be comfortable with that. Where someone else is more gregarious, they want to work more with other people. So it does some guidance in terms of career and work for each life path, as you've probably seen in the book. But the key here is self-knowledge. The words were written above the entrance to the Temple of Delphi in the 5th century BC, that translated roughly to know thyself. And every spiritual quest, every tradition agrees on that. because self-knowledge is key to understanding ourselves, our values, our talents, our interests, our drive. And if we don't know ourselves realistically, we end up making the right choices for the wrong person, the one we thought we were. So that's one purpose of the book, so we can get this self-knowledge and make wiser decisions in life, because we really get a better sense of who we are realistically.
Right, right. Well, it's fascinating stuff. I just, like I said, did several people that I knew really, really well and was really quite taken aback by it. So very interesting stuff. You wrote an essay and you said in there, author Jack London once proposed that it takes hard writing to make easy reading. And this is an easy read, even though it's a big book, it's an easy read. What do you want listeners to know, to take away from our conversation today if they heard nothing else?
To appreciate their uniqueness, even though they're working with a certain pattern, not to compare ourselves to other people. It's a form of disrespect for who we are. And to trust our process, but enjoy the path we're on and learn to make the best of it.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Dan Millman, so much. And I know you encourage listeners to go to peacefulwarrior.com, correct?
Yes.
And you can check out there what your birth number is. And, of course, the book, again, it's the 25th anniversary edition, The Life You Were Born to Live, A Guide to Finding Your Life Purpose. Thank you so much, Dan, for being with us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Vicki.
And please stay with us. We'll be right back. You are listening to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair.
Let's see if I guess that this just isn't working.
Knowing you have a great idea for a book is one thing, writing it another. So what's stopping you? Maybe you can't find time. Maybe you don't know where to begin. Maybe you wrote a couple of chapters, then disappeared down a rabbit hole. Or maybe you'd rather someone else write it for you. Partnering with the right coach or ghostwriter can make all the difference between talking about your book and finishing your book. As an award-winning writer and strategic consultant, Vicki St. Clair's storytelling credits span from business, health, self-help, and memoir to New York Times and USA Today best-selling anthologies. Vicki partners with people just like you at the exact level you need, whether you need a little encouragement, editorial guidance, or full-blown ghostwriting and consulting services. If you're serious about telling the story you know is inside you, stop procrastinating. Let's get your story down on paper. Contact Vicki today. Email Vicki at VickiSt.Clair.com or call 1-800-495-7617. See more about Vicki and her work at VickiSt.Clair.com.
Oh, yeah, that could work. Did you know that capsizing boats and people falling overboard account for over 70% of boating fatalities? 80% of those fatalities occur on boats under 26 feet and on boats with operators who've had no formal boating instruction. 50% of all boating accidents involve alcohol. Be smart this summer. Know who you're boating with. Wear a Coast Guard-approved life jacket and don't drink and boat. This message is brought to you by supporters of Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair and the JMB Group, who wish you safe boating fun.
Knowing your breasts can save your life. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susan G. Komen and the Ad Council.
Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. Innovative business leaders know to advertise here. Learn how affordable it is at conversationslive.net.
Want to hear something different from talk radio? Keep your dial on Alternative Talk 1150.
Well, we are joined now by nature writer Susan Hand Shetterly. You're listening to Conversations Live with Vicki St. Clair. And Susan frequently writes about wildlife and wetlands, and the journey of her new book began in her native Maine. It led her to Canada, Wales, Japan, the Philippines, and beyond. Susan is the author of Settled in the Wild, a collection of essays, several children's books, and the book we're discussing today, Seaweed Chronicles, A World at the Water's Edge. Susan Shetterly, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
My pleasure. I was reading one night when I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and I was reading BBC on my computer, and I came across this list of the top 10 books you absolutely must read, and yours was number 1 on there. Which is how I came across your book, Seaweed Chronicles. And I have to tell you, I'm so glad I reached out, because I just love this book. It is so well written. It reads like a story. It is a nonfiction book. You did a lot of research for it, but it reads like a story. It's beautifully written. So well done.
Thank you so much. You're very brave, because the thing is, I really wrote it for people who were like I was when I started writing it, which was, I wasn't a seaweed advocate. I really knew very little about it. And so it took me 5 years to write the book, and I was an apprentice of sorts, learning about it. And all of a sudden it became a very deep, complicated book about the interweave of seaweeds, wildlife, and coastal people. And I found it pretty exciting.
Yeah. So what got you interested in writing about seaweed in the first place? You are a nature writer. You've written for a long time about wildlife and wetlands and,
right.
And articles and etc. But what made you want to write about seaweed in the beginning?
Well, to be very honest with you, I was planning to write a book of essays. And I was reading the list of essays that I was thinking about writing to my agent. And I listed one of them as going out with a woman who's a seaweed harvester and cutting seaweed with her. And my agent said, "Oh, Susan, just write a whole book about seaweed." And I thought, she's crazy. That's impossible, because there isn't that much to say about seaweed. But I was dead wrong, and it took me 5 years to write the book because there's so much to say about it. And believe me, I haven't said everything there is to say about it. It's almost like an introduction to seaweed.
Well, I can actually believe it, but it's fascinating because I had the same thing. I thought, okay, well, a book about seaweed. Well, what can you say about seaweed? But it's a lot of things. There's a whole world out there that we just do not know about it. So I guess let's begin with where you began your research, because you started in Maine, and then that kind of took you many places around the world.
Well, to be honest, here's how it was done. The big challenge was, after I wrote a book proposal and started thinking about how to write a book about seaweed, I realized right away it was too big. And so how was I going to make a story? Because I really wanted a story that grabbed the reader, that wasn't going to sort of mesmerize them and make them fall asleep and go everywhere. So this is how I chose to do it. It's anchored here in the Gulf of Maine. And the people who often take up a whole chapter are people who are teaching me about one aspect of seaweed or another. And they are here in the Gulf of Maine. They're biologists, most of them, or they're seaweed harvesters, or they're doing seaweed aquaculture. And then I didn't go to Wales. I didn't go to the other places in the book. But what I did was I found out from people in Maine who are phycologists, that means seaweed scientists, whom to talk to in other places of the world. And I called, and I found out stories, and I was told where to go for the research. And so that's how I put the book together.
Mm-hmm. And so let's begin with what seaweed is, because we've certainly, I know I was out sailing, I've been sailing a few times this summer, and sometimes we've been surrounded by seaweed, and it's like, what is going on? But first of all, it's not a
Right.
plant, which I think many people think it is.
Right.
It's actually an algae. So can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit more about what it is, and why it's
Okay.
important?
Well, it is, seaweeds are algae, and there are two kinds of algae that it's probably a good way to think about it. One is called microalgae, and that's phytoplankton, and that's the little one-celled algae that you see out in the ocean and also in fresh water. And they just blanket areas of the ocean or the Great Lakes or wherever. And then you have seaweeds, and they're anchored, usually, not always, but usually, along the shore. And they're macroalgae. And what they are is sort of a compilation of all the one-celled animals. The one-celled phytoplankton out in the water. In other words, they don't have the sophistication of land plants. Each cell in their bodies takes in sunlight and converts it to food. And each cell in their body takes in the nutrients from salt water and converts that with sunlight into food. So they work differently than land plants.
Mm-hmm.
And they're important because they shelter a lot of sea life. They feed a lot of sea life, not necessarily sea life eating the seaweeds, but hunting in the seaweeds for other sea life. And then they do rip free in a storm, and they do float out into the water, and they fertilize great swaths of the water. So they're not just taking care of the inshore, but they also provide nutrients to the deeper water.
Right.
But you did say when you were sailing, you were surrounded by seaweed?
Yeah, it would just come in. It would get like great big floating masses of it.
And where were you sailing?
On the Puget Sound.
Well,
South
the problem,
Sound.
Right. The problem with that we're having now along shores all over the world, really, is too much of our nutrients, our nitrogen from farming or other systems, our septic systems, and stuff like that, are flowing into the oceans. We're not really careful about that. And seaweed will take that in as they'll take in whatever is in the water. So they take that in, and it makes them grow hugely. And so they can grow too big, and then they can make it hard to sail and hard to swim, and they can pile up on beaches, and they can actually hurt wildlife, such as hawksbill turtles and other forms of life, because the babies trying to hatch out of the sand and get into the water will be smothered by the seaweed.
Right.
So it's very important for us to make sure that none of our heavy nutrient load goes into the ocean. The ocean has enough.
Right. It's really interesting because it's a very fine balance, because you write in the book that sea otters require this forest of seaweed to survive. And, of course, sea otters were almost extinct at one point. And yet, later in the book, you share a story when things go wrong that happened in Brittany, when a horse and rider broke through. This was a hot crust had formed, so it's maybe the negative side of what's going on, and the horse actually died from toxic fumes.
Right.
So, so that there just shows what a fine balance it is, I think.
Well, I think you're right, and I think it also shows that two other things. One is we don't really know very much about our oceans. We're just beginning to find out about them. And one thing, of course, we're finding out is that they're essential to our lives for many reasons. Not only because that phytoplankton and seaweeds give us the oxygen we need to breathe, but obviously they've given us food and many other things. And number two, we're finding out now all around the world that if we want wild functioning systems, or you can just say functioning ecosystems, you don't have to say wild. You may not think they're wild anymore because they're certainly altered. Then we have to work to fix them. I mean, that's our choice now. And so many people, for instance, in my book, have chosen to stay here at the coast to work on one aspect of fisheries. A lot of them, most of them I write about are in seaweed harvest of one kind or another, or they're studying seaweeds and finding out how to protect them, what they do, their uses. So, yeah, we've got to pay close attention because we've messed up a lot of systems.
Right, right. Well, loads more questions for you, Susan. We need to take a very quick break, so we'll do that now, and I don't have to interrupt you. My guest is Susan Hand-Shetterly. She is a nature writer, and her new book is called Seaweed Chronicles, A World at the Water's Edge. And I'll just leave you with, she has a list of 10 surprising things you didn't know about seaweed in her media kit here. And one is that phycologists, the scientists who specialize in seaweeds, estimate there are between 30,000 and 1 million species of seaweed worldwide. We will be right back. You're listening to Conversations Live.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to New Pro Supplements, we cover the world of animals. This week, September 29th, it's an encore presentation of Behavior Training and Healing Sunday with me. In this edition, I spent almost the whole show talking about dogfights and covered the basics you need to know, like things to teach your dog and how to break up and prevent dogfights. Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Hi, this is Vicky St. Clair. If you have a business, service, or event and would like to deliver your message to a large audience, call me at 425-269-4772. Let Conversations Live shine the spotlight on you. Call 425-269-4772.
Looking for unconditional love, an exercise buddy, or a great listener? Paws has the dog or cat of your dreams, just waiting to meet you. We've made thousands of perfect matches since 1967 because everyone needs a warm, safe place to call home. Find out more today at paws.org or call 425-787-2500.
Conversations Live with Vicky St. Clair. Ordinary people leading extraordinary lives. Advertise. Learn more at conversationslive.net.
Easy on the ears, good for the soul. Alternative Talk 1150.
Don't pay no fee, because that was the river, and this is the sea.
And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. And we are talking about Seaweed Chronicles, A World at the Water's Edge, written by Susan Hand-Shetterly. She's also the author of Settled in the Wild and has been writing about wildlife and wetlands for about 30 years. And I want to read this quote to you because it's on the book jacket. And it's from Mark Kalansky, and he says, "You might not expect unfettered passion on the topic of seaweed, but Shetterly is such a great storyteller that you find yourself following along eagerly." And I had to laugh when I read that because that's exactly what happened with me. So one of the things I was surprised to read in here, often we see tar-like material on the beach. I can't tell you how many beach towels I've ruined from that stuff. And it's actually not tar at all, or it may not be tar. So would you explain that to us?
Of course. First of all, it very well may be tar if it's on a beach. But what I was talking about is a species of seaweed that grows here in the Gulf of Maine, and it's called, the common name is false Irish moss. And it's a wonderful seaweed, but for a long time, people would see by those beds of seaweed these little splats of dark, slippery stuff against the rocks, and they would assume that that was some kind of pollution. I assumed it too. a tar, maybe that had come from a motorboat or something. But, of course, that's not what it was. It was one of the generations of this particular seaweed, and it took phycologists a certain amount of time to figure that out. So seaweeds do go through different shapes and forms sometimes. They have a sporophyte phase, a lot of them, and then a gamete phase, which is a sexual phase where they have eggs and sperm, but then they also have the spore-like phase. So the sexual one helps them to diversify and to remain genetically strong. But the sporophyte ones make sure that at least in the ocean where they have to find each other and settle and start to grow, and it's pretty difficult in the ocean, that they'll at least get a chance to live and carry out their life cycle. So the two fit together very neatly, and that black tar-like thing next to the false Irish moss, those splats, are really just the sporophyte phase.
And so are they indigenous just to that area of Maine then?
Well, that's an interesting question. They are indigenous to the North Atlantic. My guess is that they may also be on the Irish-English coast,
interesting.
but I'm not sure.
So let's talk about seaweed as food, because a lot of people eat it. You say you're not a seaweed eater. At least that's what you maintain, but it's not precisely true. So what's going on there?
Well, what I meant by that is that probably all of us today have encountered seaweed in one way or another. And it is in a lot of foods. And it's in toothpaste and shampoos and makeup and lipsticks. And it's a lot of the processed foods you would get, use it as a binder because it mixes very nicely with other ingredients and combines them all very smoothly. The thing that I find interesting, other than all these things and also pet foods, is that a lot of our seaweed along the Maine coast is cut for industrial use. It's cut in great quantities, and it's dried and ground up, and then shipped out to Midwestern industrial farms to grow soybeans and corn and things like that, because they've lost their topsoil, and our seaweed is then spread over the farm and enriches them. The question is, do you really want to take seaweed from the Atlantic and spread it on the farms in the Midwest?
Right.
Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But
right.
it is kind of interesting. Yeah.
One of the characters you talk about in the book, Sarah Redmond, she's a farmer, and takes her boat to her field every day. She says, everybody's talking about food security, but nobody's talking about nutrient security. And she goes on to say people aren't getting the nutrients they need, and seaweed can do that for them in small quantities by folding it into food that people already eat. So did you actually go out and visit with her?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I spent a great deal of time with her, and it was wonderful going out on an aquaculture farm. What she had chosen, she now has a different farm a little farther down east, but what she had chosen was this beautiful bay, very deep, cold water, over a mud bottom. Seaweeds usually anchor to the shore, so they need some kind of rock. They don't grow attached to mud. They don't have a root system. And so she's not shading out any wild seaweeds. That's number one, and that's really great. But so she has this great big square, and she sets her lines, and there's strings with little baby seaweeds that hang down from the lines, and she farms in the winter in Maine, out on a boat in this bay. And she grows beautiful seaweed. I mean, I was saying to you, I mean, in the book and also to you, that I'm not crazy about eating seaweed, but when we were out in that boat and we were pulling up the lines and everybody was tasting the seaweed to see how the crop was, it was delicious. And we were eating sugar kelp and alaria and nori and dulse, and they were delicious, crisp and salty and just wonderful.
That's really eye-opening. I didn't realize this was such a huge industry, and great that somebody can have their own farm on their own terms there. Just a couple of facts here. You say at least 35 countries are involved in seaweed production. Maine is becoming the largest resource for edible and commercial seaweeds in the United States. And there is actually such a thing as the Seaweed Council. And I bring this up because we're going through a period right now where so many organizations and groups are being deregulated. And the Seaweed Council actually wanted regulation. Why? How so?
Well, it's very interesting. First of all, you have to think about our history here in the Gulf of Maine. We've lost a lot of fish species. We've done our own plundering, and we're very aware of that history, and it makes us unhappy. So what those independent businesses and the harvesters were trying to do was to set up a system to go to the Department of Marine Resources and ask for rules that would protect the harvest and that would protect their livelihood, so that the seaweed was not squandered and so that they could continue to supply good seaweeds and make a living. The thing is that I think they were also worried about big companies coming in here and overpowering them. And with a bunch of rules in place, they have some protection.
That makes sense to me. So we're right at the end of our segment, unfortunately. But you write at the back of the book, I wrote this book to explore the complexity and beauty of a wild inshore system, which you believe we owe a great deal. But the people you learned from have given you more than that.
Right.
And so we've only got 30 seconds here, but tell us how this journey changed the way you see things.
Oh, it totally changed the way I see things. First of all, I'm so impressed with how hard they work. They stay here and do the work. And it's long, hard scientific work or harvesting. Nothing is easy making a living or studying the shore, but they persevere and they love it.
Yeah.
I mean, they love being out in a wild system. And also, they're trying to protect what's left. And that's what we all are going to be getting to have to do, it seems to me.
Yes, and that's a great note to leave on, because we can get involved at a local level on a community basis, and you say that's what's making the difference. Great book, superbly well written, Seaweed Chronicles, A World at the Water's Edge. We can find out more about Susan at susanhandshetterly.com. Susan, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
And we're right at the end of our segment. You can find us at conversationslive.net. We will see you next week. Thanks for being with us today. Live well, live strong. Hi, this is Vicky St. Clair. If you have a business, service, or event and would like to deliver your message to a large audience, call me at 425-269-4772. Let Conversations Live shine the spotlight on you. Call 425-269-4772.
Next week on Conversations Live with Vicky St. Clair, award-winning Seattle filmmaker, author, speaker, and activist John DeGraff. An icon in the documentary film industry, John DeGraff has written and produced more than 40 films and authored 3 books, including the highly acclaimed Affluenza. His latest film, Torn Between Two Worlds, explores a thriving California city striving to be a fully self-sustainable community. Tune in Mondays at noon Pacific Time and Fridays at 6 a.m. Catch up on podcasts at conversationslive.net.
Hi, I'm Kathy Cooper, and every Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m., I'll be hosting Lost and Found. We'll be discussing all types of losses, but it's not going to be the doom and gloom hour. It'll be an hour of education, support, validation, and yes, we will have a little bit of humor. So won't you join me Wednesdays 1 to 2 p.m. Lost and Found, because every loss matters, and through every loss, something can be found.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of KKNW, its management, or other advertisers. Contests are the responsibility of the host of this program and not KKNW. This is Alternative Talk 1150 AM, KKNW Seattle, and KNUC 98.9 HD3 Seattle.
Well, good afternoon. Eric Ryder here with you on Alternative Talk 1150 AM. We are headed towards 1 o'clock. Time for a quick look at our traffic. Southbound I-5 from North Gateway to the 520 interchange is slow at this hour. 405 southbound congestion from Northeast 8th to Coal Creek Parkway and a little more slowing around Northeast 44th. Stay tuned to Alternative Talk 1150 AM. Coming up next, it's So You Think You're Awake. It's our Dream Interpretation show sponsored by Ashling Dream Interpretation and hosted by Michael Sheridan. Right now, 61 degrees under cloudy skies here in the Puget Sound. Hope you're having a great fall afternoon.
Climate debate heats up. FBI arrests a soldier. I'm Mike Moss. President Trump poked his head in for about 10 minutes today. United Nations General Assembly members tackled climate change. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says change is already happening.
Science tells us that our current path, we face at least 3 degrees Celsius of global heating by the end of the century. I will not be there, but my granddaughters will, and your grandchildren too. I refuse to be an accomplice in the destruction of their own and only home.
Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg chided the world leaders for talking but not doing much.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
The FBI has arrested 24-year-old U.S. soldier Jarrett Smith in Kansas. Correspondent Shimon Prokupez.
He was putting posts on Facebook saying that he was interested in traveling to the Ukraine to fight with a paramilitary group out there. And then he was also offering to help people build bombs.
Smith also discussed blowing up the headquarters of a U.S. news network and targeting Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke. The interim president of the University of Oklahoma is condemning the use of blackface after a student's social media post showed a white man with a black substance on his face. President Joe Harris says that while wearing blackface is racist, free speech protections likely prohibit him from removing the student from the campus. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 43, S&P up 3 points. I'm Mike Moss.
Time now for a quick look at our weather outlook. Tonight, mostly cloudy skies expected, a low around 57. Chance of rain as well. Mostly cloudy for our Tuesday with a high near 66. And then a low around 53. Partly sunny for our Wednesday with a high near 65. Then rain likely Wednesday evening.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of KKNW, its management, or other advertisers. This program is sponsored by Ashling Dream Interpretation.
Welcome to So You Think You're Awake, the show about life transformation through dream interpretation. I'm Michael Sheridan. On this show, through analyzing your dreams, I reveal your potential and the obstacles you need to overcome. I'm very specific. I tell you the magic power you have, what makes you magnificent, and the bumps in life that are holding you back. These bumps are not in the way, they are the way. To get in on the action, go to dream-analysis.com, fill in the form and submit your dream to the show. That's it. That's all you have to do. I will take it from there. So this week I'm just going to cover a few dreams of varying themes. And the first one that I have is from Nancy. She says, "We were on a Coast Guard ship. It was docking. We went downstairs to the edge of the ship. We stepped over a low bar to the dock, but a woman crawled awkwardly under the bar. The dock was in a large wooden boathouse/warehouse. I wanted to go out and walk around, but it was evening and the big doors were being locked. I was guided to a door and a hallway where I met my guide. He was the actor who played the main engineer on Stargate Atlantis. We walked up a rickety wooden stairs. I went first. At the top of the stairs were 2 doors that seemed to lead to the same place. The large one was closed and the narrow one was open. I walked through the open door and looked back at my guide, who was a little overweight, and wondered if he would make it through. He did. Okay, so I'll stop there for a second. It's always interesting, isn't it, when you hear a dream, especially because I didn't stop anywhere and say what anything meant. You're probably all listening to it and going, that just doesn't make any sense. But it's always fun then when you see what they do mean. So we have several symbols in here that make this timeline be about the dreamer's birth. The first is she arrives at a dock, a ship arriving at a dock. Any arrival, like a ship's arrival, a train arrival, an airplane arrival, that's always about your arrival on the planet. We call a new child a new arrival. And we also have the pun when it comes particularly to ships. Ship's birth at a dock. So we have the pun. Spelling's different, but the pun is there. And then we also have her moving downstairs to the edge of the ship when it's coming to the dock. And the moving downstairs is moving from the spirit world, the higher vibration, to the lower vibration, which is the physical earth plane. And then the last one, which is a very, very common one to see, is she talks about there being 2 doors, one wide one and one narrow one, and she goes through the narrow one. Going through a gap or a narrow doorway in a dream is always going to be about birth. So 3 symbols there tells us about birth. What else do we see in there? We see lots of references to wood. We see a rickety wooden stairs. We see mention of a wooden boathouse. And there's more mentions of wood later on in the dream too. But that means that the dream is talking about the dreamer's elimination system. So she may or may not be aware of this. I'd say she would be, though, with all the references there. But it's not really anything serious. It's just saying, hey, that digestive system problem that you're trying to figure out and solve, it actually comes from birth. So you need to look back at your birth in order to fix it. Do some therapy around birth. Now, there's more in the dream. She meets a guide. She's guided to meet a guide in the hallway. So this person is aware of her guides. I'd say she's consciously aware of her guides today. And she's also a channel because she meets an actor. Her guide is an actor, and an actor is told what to say. So it means that she can be told what to say by guides, and that's what a channel does. So the other thing that we see is she talks about there being 2 doors that seem to lead to the same place. And 2 is a very common thing to see. The number 2, very common in dreams for people who are channels, because the 2-way communication is so important. We see it shown up time and time again. It's the number 2. Anything else in there? There is. I'll come back to one other piece later on, but let's continue on for the moment. But there you go. We go from nonsense to total sense. Here's the next paragraph. He shepherded me out of the building to a large observation deck well above the water. The rail was made of 2 horizontal pipes. It was dusk, but I could see the slough or slow river coming through the woods to this wider section of water. I travelled past the building to where our ship docked. Now, I told you wood was going to come up again. So it goes through woods into this wider section of water, and a forest or woods is undoubtedly always going to be about elimination system. So definitely the dreamer wants to improve something there, and might even have been on her mind looking for solutions to this before going to sleep. But I did ask her about her birth, and she said, yes, my umbilical cord was wrapped around me. And the hospital staff said it was the longest they had ever seen in all their career. So there was an issue at birth. I vaguely remember her telling me that there was something else, like way before birth while she was in the womb, but I can't remember it now. What else do we have? Yeah, the observation deck. So this means that the dreamer kind of like steps back and looks at life. Rather than having a perfect bond with the earth plane, she stepped back. And this is a classic thing for somebody who would make a really good counselor, because of the poor bond, which they have to suffer all the way through until they do something to heal it, which is what this dream is suggesting. But the sacrifice that they make allows them see things that other people don't see. So they can see uniqueness in all their friends. They're the person that everybody goes to for help when they can't figure things out, because they just have a different set of eyes on the world. They see things. Anyway, what else have we got? Yeah, there's also a mention of 2 horizontal pipes. So the 2 is always going to come up for a channel. Anyway, in the water were spotlights, so those of us on the observation deck could see under the water. Now, these are your special ability. So these, the lights in the water means that you have a strong intuition, a strong psychic connection, strong connection with your soul, and you're able to use that to see into the spirit world, because that's what the sea represents. My guide pointed to the left at a deep depression in the water and said that it is where an ancient ship had crashed long ago. He asked if I'd like to go to a lower observation window and take a closer look. But before I could answer, he walked to the right and he said, I want to show you something. That area of the deck had no rail and he stepped off into the water. I wondered if I should have followed him. And the answer is yes. You always follow your guide in a dream, because anything they ever do is perfect. It's infallible. Anything they say is infallible as well. So definitely should have followed him. And I actually think I got 2 copies of this dream, because I do remember, and I think it was this dream, the dreamer actually going into the water and seeing a city. But maybe I'm mixing 2 different dreams up. I don't see Atlantis often in dreams, but that's what this spaceship that crashed to the left is about. Now, Atlantis wasn't a spaceship as far as I know, not that I know. But we see the guide says that there was points at this deep depression in the water to the left, and the left is the past in the dream. So he's saying, look, this went on in the past, and the ancient ship is going to be about people with deep spiritual wisdom or knowledge, let's say, so deep knowledge of the spirit world, and that's what is down there under the water. And he says, do you want to get in touch with this? Do you want to do what I'm doing, dive into the water and get in touch with it? So it means that this dreamer had a connection with Atlantis. Now, we know that from the start of the dream, because the astute listener will remember that she said her guide looked like the engineer on Stargate Atlantis. So even without that, though, we would know that that's what this is about. I don't see it that often, but I have seen it in enough dreams to know what it looks like. And this underwater spaceship or an underwater city or something along those lines is enough to emphasize it. So that's it. You've got a strong counseling ability, you have a strong channeling ability, and a strong psychic ability or strong intuition. You're meant to use those. You brought them with you. That's why we see them in dreams that talk about your birth. And using those is going to help you heal your body and deal with the elimination system issues that are going on now. So thank you, Nancy, for that dream. She called it aliens in the water, by the way. Aliens, we've had that in dreams recently where somebody's afraid of a UFO and things like that. And it's always about guides. It really depends on your culture. You know, aliens from the heavens or anybody from the heavens, it's going to represent your guides. And depending on your culture, depending on where you're from, you could dream of other things. So, for instance, Westerners who have no knowledge of Asian culture could dream of Chinese people, and they could represent guides because it's such a different culture. Now, that's not that common, but it's common enough to see that in dreams. It's such a different culture. It's like, hey, you know, here's something you need to learn. You need to learn the language. You need to learn to communicate and so on. But there'll be other symbols in the dream that say, that tell us it is about communicating with the spirit world, which is what it generally is. So let's have a look at another dream. This one is from Shante. I hope I pronounced that right. She says, I was at my job, which is a home for special needs adults. Well, fair play to you for what you do. But we ignore that part because that's part of your reality. And you say, I was on the phone with a male friend that I talk to all the time. Now, so the clue here with the phone tells us it's about channeling straight away because it's communication. There was a knock at the door. As I was going to answer, I was pulling my pants up trying to fix my clothes. When I answered the door, it was a man who is an actor on television who is named John Marshall Jones, and he had a singing telegram. He gave me a paper with which it was supposed to have the information on about the telegram, but I really couldn't recognize it. These are the words of the dreamer. The dreamer typed. Don't blame me. He started singing happy birthday to me, and I'm thinking to myself, it's not even my birthday. Yet the guy on the phone was silent as this was going on. When the song was over, I closed the door and the man started checking the mailbox. And then I said to myself, oh, he must be the owner. And then I woke up. Okay, so let's start at the end. You're meant to check for messages. He checked the mailbox. He's showing you what to do. Anybody with a title in a dream, so anybody who is a singing telegram person, that's a title. A title I made up, but they have a title. So that says that you have, they're a guide, and whatever they do, you're meant to do. Just like the last dream, jump into the water after them, i.e. get into your spiritual side. This one is saying, check for messages. You are getting messages from your guides that you are ignoring. You have a channeling ability, and that's what I said the phone represents. But then you also say he was an actor on television. So another dream where we have another actor and also saying channel, because again, actors are told what to say, just like channels are told what to say. And then singing is another symbol for channeling, because music comes from the spirit world, and anybody who's had a near-death experience, almost anybody, talks about hearing this harmonious music all the way through their journey. And so its strong association with the spirit world makes it about channeling too. So we have several symbols there from that dreamer. And she says at the start, I was pulling my pants up, trying to fix my clothes. And I assume your pants weren't down around your ankles, that you're just pulling your pants up because they slipped down a bit. So that's really saying, look, you need to check your attitude towards this, because that's what clothes represent in a dream, your role or your attitude towards a particular role. And so it's like you need to pull your pants up and get on with the fact that you're a channel and learn how to do it and start doing it. And we also see a reference to birth in this dream, just like the last dream, but it's more obvious here because he's singing about saying happy birthday. So it's like you came here with this gift. And this is true with every gift that everybody has. The gifts we practice with them for years before coming to the earth plane. We don't need to learn how to use them here. Of course, you can do courses, etc., etc. But channeling is one of those things that you want to really be careful about. There are so many ways to channel, and you need to know how it's going to work for you. So be careful about picking up a book that says, I'm going to teach you how to channel, because it may not be about how it works for you. And if you try to do it the wrong way, you're not going to get anywhere. Some people have a few different ways that it works, mind you. But even so, you want to know exactly how it works and practice that way, because that's the only way it's going to work for you. Let's have a look at another. This one is from Willow. She gives 3 dreams. I'm only going to do one, I think. She says, my ex pays me money. I was somewhere with my oldest daughter's father, and he said he was going to give me money soon, like $7,000 plus. And I was surprised, and I asked him to repeat what he'd said. I didn't understand his motivation. I wanted the money, but didn't know why he was doing it or what I might owe him. Then he said he would just owe less child support if he paid a large chunk now. I also saw a map of the globe, and it started with zooming out of Africa and panned over to the USA, and I thought it interesting that so much of the USA was lakes and water. Then it zoomed in on a pretty lake that had the reflection of the colors of a sunset or sunrise on it. Okay, so this dream is saying, okay, so you have to know a little bit about the background of this dreamer. So she is one of these people that she lives in the West, she lives in the US. The Western world has very specific attitudes towards sexual conduct, sexuality, and so on, that are unique to the Western world. They're not shared by the spirit world. You know, the idea of monogamous relationships, the idea of getting married before sex. Well, let's put it this way. Marriage doesn't even exist in the spirit world. So what we have on the earth plane and the lens through which we decide to explore ourselves and our sexuality is very much man-made here, but we still pick this culture for a reason. And that's the reason I'm saying that is this person, you would have, if you knew her life history, you would have thought she escaped that because she got into kind of, with her first boyfriend, who's the father of her oldest daughter, she got into a lifestyle where you would say she had escaped the whole idea that sex is dirty and everything that goes along with that. That is very much a Western culture incorrect attitude. There's nothing dirty about sex. The sexual act is what allows spirits move from the spirit world to the physical world. Women are the doorway between the spirit world and the physical world. And a child coming into the world and the sexual act that causes that to happen is very much respected in the spirit world. It's just not respected in Western culture. So anyway, it looked like this person had escaped it, that Willow had escaped that. But then it turned out that her partner at the time, her longtime boyfriend, decided that having an open relationship was something that was okay for him, but not for her. And so it all toppled in on top of her, and it's part of, according to this dream, it's part of her spiritual journey. That's why he's going to give you $7,000. So the dream is saying, work on the issues around him, deal with the issues around him, because figuring that out, healing from that, is what is going to, is a vital part, a very vital part of your spiritual journey. And we know it's very vital because it's not just the number 7, it's got 3 zeros after it to emphasize it. So this is 7 is about your spiritual journey. So this is part of how you heal and grow. Now, Willow also worked helping save women who were in the sex trade. So it's an area of interest that she has. She was never abused herself. So it comes from somewhere. This whole exploration of this aspect of human nature and her nature is a huge part of how she's going to grow and heal, grow spiritually, that is. And so she's got to work that out. And it's not about what's his motivation. And this is a big thing. If you look at your partners or ex-partners, especially when there's a child involved, and if they think, oh, hey, every so often we're going to get together and hang out, and there's no long-term relationship requirement, etc., that's a pressure that women who are raising children from men who are out of their lives can feel, and she does feel. And so that's one of the things that she's got to overcome. But it's not about you understanding his motivation. It's all from your perspective. You got to figure it out from your perspective. You've also got to make sure you don't pick men who are unavailable, like you're currently in a relationship with a guy who's married. And that's a classic for, if I really don't want to commit to a relationship, I can pick somebody who's not available. And I can say, but I don't know why it is. Why am I always attracted to those people? And you do that because it's an easy out for you. You know that relationship is never going to go anywhere because you don't want it to go anywhere. And so this is all part of what you've got to explore. You had great brownie points, I'd say, when I was talking about you helping people who are trapped in the sex trade. And then I probably blew it all with the last statement. But anyway, that's it. That's what you need to do. The investment is from your side, the investment in working it out. And then the dream says it shows you a map. And a map is really good. A map always shows you where you are. So it doesn't matter where you think you are. Where you are is what's important. And anytime we look at a map, we have to figure out where we are because we need to know that so that we know how to get to where we need to get to. And most of us most people who are trying to do stuff in the spiritual field or in any field, they look at where they want to be. And it's almost like picking the map up and looking at that point and not looking at, well, you're actually over here, so these are the roads you got to take. This is the path you've got to take. We look at where we want to be and we start acting like we're there, which doesn't help, doesn't get us there at all. Anyway, this dream, because it shows a map of the globe, it's saying, and it zooms out of Africa. Africa is about the root of things, the cradle of civilization, so it's like where everything comes from. So it's saying, like, deal with that root issue. That very basic issue where you understand where you're coming from. And then you will move from there into, lakes are all about saying you have a deep spiritual reservoir that you haven't tapped. And, because there's no flow in a lake, it's a calm body of water. So you need to create outlets for your spirituality, but you need to do it after you work on this big issue for you, because it's a big, big issue. And when you get to the end of it, you'll understand why. And before you get to the end of it, you won't understand why, which is where you are now. And you say that you ended up, it zoomed in on a pretty lake that had the reflection of the colors of a sunset or a sunrise in it. So this is like shine your light through your gifts. You have this inner light. You probably don't see it in yourself. because you're probably very critical of yourself and the issues that you have in your own life. You're like, okay, and the things that you see in life and have seen in your life, you're hard on yourself that way. And so it's saying, look, deal with that, and then you're going to see your own inner light reflected in the spiritual gifts that you have and bring to the world. Okay, so I hope I did that one justice. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, so it might have been last week or a couple of weeks ago, I did a dream from Leah. And here's another one. She says, and they're probably not even in the right order, but she says, I was on vacation somewhere foreign with family members. I liked it okay, but then I saw a giant yellow and orange snake like a Burmese python. I pointed to it and others reacted with fear too. We scattered, but suddenly began seeing them everywhere and they were on the move. I decided to try flying and it worked. Now, I don't expect you to remember her dream, but the analysis of her dream, basically it was her moving through a house, hiding from a lion. And it was about her hiding in the womb. So she didn't feel wanted, didn't have permission from her mom to enter her mom's body. And so it's like the baby is developing in the womb and doesn't feel like it's welcome, didn't get permission, etc. And maybe do, because I made some good quips on that one. But anyway, this dream is the same thing. I decided to try flying and it worked. So this says that you have the ability to rationalize. You move up into your head. That's your escape mechanism, which is what flying represents in a dream. You analyze. I was off the ground. I was a little concerned that my parents would see me. See this? I want to hide from my parents. I don't want them to see me, because if they see me, they'll be like, we don't want her. But under the circumstances, it was worth it. I went inside the house. My mother suggested we go in one room. So the issues that you have are around your mom. That's what you need to heal. This dream is about, it's kind of a warning about health issues, but it's not common for your dreams, but it's still a warning to do with elimination system, digestive and elimination system. So this is another reason to deal with the issues around your mom and the not being wanted in the womb. Anyway, she suggested we go in one room, but there were slime trails there. Okay, yeah, definitely we know it's elimination system. And you say, ooh, and I say, ooh, too. I found a room and could land and rest. Then the snakes left, and it turned out they come around the same time every day. In some cases, it can be a lot worse, with hundreds swarming someone's house. So this feeling of the snakes, okay, I'm saying it's a health warning, but it's not a really big health warning because we don't see this much in your dreams at all. But it's more about you also feeling like a snake by being unwanted and being in your mom's womb. And that's really the link. That's why you've got that showing up there. And I'm going to skip that and just go to the next scene. Skipping a bit, moving to the next scene, you say, I was hiding in the kitchen from people I knew. So again, this hiding, I didn't want them to know I was there because it might mess something up and you don't know what it was. Then somebody knocked. I sneaked to open the door and told the young girl there that I could let her in, but she couldn't tell anyone I was there. So again, this hiding, that's your thing. That's what you've got to fix. And it's going to solve so much in your life. So go back, look at that, figure out what it comes from, and all the other things connected to it are going to happen. Like your spiritual leadership ability, your health issues are going to improve, and so on and so on. So quite good. Let's have a look at another. This one is from Erica. She says, I was hanging out with a friend in the woods. She had a pop-up camper attached to the back of her car that fit one full-sized bed with white sheets. She said this is how she travels around the country. She had to go do something, so I laid down to sleep, and I worried about my safety, and if I traveled the country this way. Now, what you need to know about Erica is that she's one of the bravest people I know. She actually is traveling different countries, foreign countries like Mexico and Europe, Latin America, not just Mexico. And she's doing it on her own and just going from place to place to place. And this dream is about that. So we see the pop-up wood and the pop-up camper in the woods, and the being worried about safety and so on is important for her because that's the lifestyle she's currently living. and we're going to come back to that. Then I was on a beach trying to outfit a woman with a purple ski jacket and boots. The sheepskin boots looked like they were too small, but when I handed them to her, I told her they would stretch to fit her feet. The waves were crashing into the shore and getting better or closer. I went to my cabin a few yards away, and the waves were crashing into the front door and had booked the door frame, blocked, I imagine, the door frame, so the door was no longer attached. Okay, so they'd hit the door frame so the door frame was no longer attached. I had to sit inside in the floor against the door to keep the waves from flooding my cabin. There was no furniture to anchor my feet and hands for strength. We see anything else that's important. Then I was okay. So this is really saying, okay, this journey that you're on, this is an important thing for you to do. Like we look at the purple ski jacket and boots. So purple is about spiritual leadership, but a jacket, you don't normally see a jacket with something that's as positive as leadership. So it's like you protect yourself with your spiritual side. So it's like I have a strong spiritual side, and that's my escape. I escape to that, and I'm able to forget about all the problems I have in the world, and I know I'm really good at doing the spiritual things I do. And this dream is saying, no, you've got to integrate your spiritual side into the rest of your life. Like you going on this trip, furniture in dreams represents attitudes that you picked up from other people. So and we have the waves crashing at the shore is about a very difficult start to life. So the dream is saying, look, you need to unanchor yourself from all the things that you hold on to or held on to that allow you keep life closed off and closed away, keeping the water out of the building. And so this trip is about you discovering who you are and giving yourself the support that you need in life so that you grow. It's all about growing your male side, healing your male side, and that's what your journey's for. And it's definitely going to give you that. And by the end of you doing all this, like you'll be an unstoppable force when it comes to male energy, but you will understand it fully from your perspective, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, well, that's it. That's my show for this week. Thank you for listening. And remember, go to dream-analysis.com and send me your dreams, and we will have them on a future show. Thank you.
Former Vice President Al Gore says the controversy surrounding a whistleblower complaint and President Trump's conversations with Ukrainian President Zelensky gives new impetus to calls for impeachment proceedings. Trump denies putting pressure on Zelensky to look for dirt on Joe Biden and his son.
There was no pressure put on them whatsoever. I put no pressure on them whatsoever. I could have. I think it would possibly have been okay if I did. But I didn't. I didn't put any pressure on them whatsoever.
Britain joined the United States today in blaming Iran for attacks on key oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. But the Iranian foreign minister pointed to claims of responsibility by Yemeni rebels and said if Iran were behind the attack, nothing would have been left of the refinery. A U.S. soldier has been arrested and charged with planning to bomb a U.S. news organization and attack Democratic president candidate Beto O'Rourke. On Wall Street, the Dow is up about 70 points. I'm Mike Moss.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers and are not necessarily those of KKNW, its management, or other advertisers. This is Alternative Talk 1150.
The following is a paid advertisement brought to you by Purity Products. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
If it involves nutrition and promotes human health, we're talking about it.
This is fantastic. You'll notice the difference in your joints probably in just about a week.
Have scientists discovered a molecule of youth? Can superfoods boost your brain function? Can a mineral make you stronger?
This is Purity Products, where we go behind the scenes to give you special access into the world of nutrition. Now, here's your host, Pat Campbell.
I've got Dr. Neil Levin here to share some research that's hot off the press that holds the promise to dramatically enhance your health. But first, let me ask you this. Have you noticed that once you hit 50, you face some new health challenges? Maybe you don't have the same energy or the focus, or maybe the wear and tear on your joints are cause for concern. Maybe you're worried about your heart health. Well, Dr. Levin says he's discovered a nutrient that may be the key to unlocking better health at any age. You don't want to miss this. So with that said, Dr. Neil Levin is a chiropractor, a nutritionist, an author, and a longtime advisor for Purity Products. Welcome, Dr. Levin. This is a big story, isn't it?
Oh, it's great to be here with you today, Pat. And yeah, this is a huge story. You know, I'm a chiropractor. I do lots of nutritional consulting. Hey, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and people come into me because they want to feel better. I mean, they want to move better. They want to get rid of the aches and pains. You know, they want to feel more mental sharpness. They want to boost their energy, and they want to promote their heart health and circulation. That's key. So the question becomes, Pat, what is the common denominator here? What nutrient do I give to all of these patients? And the answer is it's krill oil, because krill is simply, it's amazing for us, and it nicely handles all of these situations: the brain, the heart, the skin, the eyes, the joints. It's simply one of the healthiest things we can possibly take.
So, Dr. Levin, I hear you loud and clear. I'm concerned about all of these things. I think as we get out of our late 40s and into our early 50s, we all want to support our joints, our heart. Of course, we want that nice, clear focus, that concentration. It's critical for me and what I do. So tell us more about why you call krill oil the single most important nutrient you can take.
Yeah, well, it turns out if you scrub the literature, you do the research, omega-3s are really the most important nutrient you can take, important for all aspects of our health. Thousands of studies on this going back decades, Pat. In fact, I've been to Norway following this story. I was recommending fish oil to my patients 20 years ago when most medical doctors didn't know anything about this. But then, Pat, about 10 years ago, there was a new breakthrough. Krill oil came on the scene with the same omega-3s as fish oil, but yet there was some really important differences between the two oils. Turns out that only krill oil has the omega-3s attached to the same exact phospholipids that make up all of the cell membranes of our cells. So why is this important? Well, it's these phospholipids that help our cell membranes to be pliable and soft, allowing for water and nutrients and waste to flow in and out of the cell. They literally improve cellular functioning. And now another thing the phospholipids do is they actually enhance the absorption of the omega-3s dramatically. So We're getting more omega-3s, into our system. That's critical. Bottom line, krill oil is super beneficial for everything: the heart, the joints, the muscles, the tendons, your eyes, your skin, pretty much every tissue in the body. But now, one more breakthrough, because today we're happy to announce there's brand new krill oil technology. It's called PhosphoBoost. It makes krill oil even better, cleaner, purer, more potent, with better health benefits than ever before.
Wow. I mean, I love the sound of that. I mean, 30% more omega-3s and 50% more phospholipids. I mean, that's a huge step forward. So break this down for us. What's exactly in your new Krill Omega Super Pill, and what makes it so special for the heart, the brain, the joints, and for cellular energy too?
All right, so this is the perfect question for right now. Let's get right into it, right? So we have a full 500 milligrams of this new PhosphoBoost Super Krill Oil. That's a really nice, healthy dosage. But we didn't stop there. We also added our concentrated, ultra-pure, high omega-3 fish oil. So there's even more a concentration of omega-3 is so important for the heart and the brain. Now, speaking of heart and brain, we also added a full 100 milligrams of highly absorbable CoQ10. That's because that's one of the most important heart nutrients and brain nutrients there is. Not only is it a great antioxidant, it's critical for energy production inside the heart muscle and inside the brain.
Little side note here, too. If you're on statins, that's a must-have, right?
Oh, absolutely. Anybody on statins, please take CoQ10. Talk to your doctor, but that's a must. Perfect. Now, we also added vitamin D, speaking of heart health and brain health, and we know from past shows, hey, vitamin D is important for pretty much everything. And now what else is important for 50-plussers like you and me, Pat? We need more antioxidant power because we just naturally create more free radicals during our metabolic process. So we added extra astaxanthin, that super potent antioxidant that's found in krill oil, right? And we did that to increase the antioxidant power of this super pill even more. So why have we done all of this? I mean, this is head and shoulders above almost anything else out there that I've seen. And this is because this is the way we like to do things at Purity Products. We have our finger on the pulse of the literature, of the research, of the new technology. We're trying to outdo our competition and trying to outdo ourselves because we want to bring the finest ingredients and nutrients to our customers. And I can say unequivocally, I'm very, very sure that with this new Krill Omega Super Pill, we've done it again. This will really make a huge difference for anybody that tries it.
So, Dr. Levin, let me try to recap this a little bit here. In this new Krill Omega Super Pill, you've added ultra pure omega-3 fish oil to this new Phospho Boost krill oil. So it's got two kinds of omega-3s. Krill oil plus fish oil, and you also added the 100 milligrams of CoQ10 plus the vitamin D. So, I mean, what a convenience. No more, taking 4 different formulas every day. No more clutter, no more crazy cost to get all of this. I got to tell you, I take it, I feel great. What a difference for my joints, the sharper brain function, for the cardio health. I like to exercise, I stay active, and your Krill Omega really makes a difference there too. So